Holy cow, folks, it's been 900 days unbroken. I'm closing in on 3 years now. So, to commemorate this Thursday, I want to talk about mitochondria, aka the powerhouse of the cell. Now, we all learned in high school biology that mitochondria is where we generate ATP, adenosine triphosphate, or the body's currency for energy. But mitochondria also play a key role in our overall health and the prevention of many diseases. So, in 2024, 75% of our healthcare costs come from things either directly or tangentially related to dysregulation of energy systems, bioenergetics. You look at polycystic ovarian syndrome, dyslipidemia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension. Now we can, to great effect, thanks to the miracle that is modern medicine, treat the symptoms of these ailments. However, we still have yet to find a big lever that deals with the underlying cause. Fortunately, nature has provided us with that lever, and that's exercise, folks. More than any modern pharmaceutical intervention, sunlight, even specific diets, exercise is the single biggest lever to improve bioenergetics and specifically mitochondrial function. Now, what kind of exercise does so? Because exercise as a general concept is very broad. To solve a specific problem, we need a specific tool. Starting with resistance training, while it seems to have some effect on the capacity and intrinsic function of mitochondria, which makes sense because you got to breathe while you lift, right? The benefits of and reasons why one should conduct resistance training are more linked to development of bone and connective tissue density, having a bigger pocket, so to speak, to store glycogen, as well as injury prevention and overall quality of life. Not to mention, nothing can as quickly or robustly affect how you look as resistance training. But specific to this discussion and how we can use exercise to improve health and fight disease, laterally by improving the function and number of our mitochondria, let's move on to the exercise modalities where our little powerhouses really shine. Notice how whenever you see a picture or an infographic of mitochondria, there's always somebody running or on a bike, and there's a good reason for that. Now, where the mitochondria really shine, both in terms of exercise and their impact on disease, is during activities of a prolonged duration where there's lots of breathing and low to moderate activity, and you have to use lipids as substrate for fuel. Endurance training, or cardio as it's often referred to colloquially, has such a robust effect on our mitochondria that as low as one single bout can cause structural changes in the organelle network. Furthermore, endurance training biases and develops our type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers, which are used in this capacity in accordance with Henneman's size principle, stating that motor units are recruited in an orderly fashion from weakest to strongest, because the nature of endurance activity means that we are producing low to moderate amounts of force over a meaningful period of time, and the other capacity that slow twitch fibers have, or rather their main capacity, is that they are more endurant. They fatigue a lot slower than the high force producing, bigger, stronger, fast twitch fibers. And that's why we use them to do things like jogging and cycling and distance swimming and things of this nature. Now, there's a reason why I mentioned type 1 muscle fibers and Henneman's size principle, as well as resistance training on the front end. While we've known for decades now, since the 70s, that endurance activity, typically characterized as LISS, low intensity, steady state cardio or conditioning, is great for increasing the number of and function of mitochondria, recent research seems to indicate that moderate continuous intensity conditioning, as well as sprint interval training, might even more so robustly increase our mitochondrial capacity. So now we're getting somewhere. Now we have 4 distinct training modalities that we can utilize to improve our mitochondria. Now, I love resistance training, but specific to the discussion of mitochondrial development, we probably got to put it in C tier. And while accessibility gives it a higher ranking, the time commitment to benefit ratio of walking, zone 1 conditioning, long slow distance, puts it in C tier as well. Now, in A tier, I'll put zone 2 moderate intensity conditioning, as well as high intensity interval sprint type workouts. And then in S tier, I'll put the combination of those last two. And what that S tier combination looks like is what you just saw me perform on the bike during the first half of this video. What I have both observed and replicated many dozens of times on myself and clients is that the combination of extended duration, moderate intensity zone 2 conditioning combined with either sprint intervals at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of the zone 2 session as one combined conditioning activity has the single most robust impact on my mitochondrial function and consequently my health markers, as demonstrated by quarter-to-quarter blood work. Now, what do I mean by zone 2 and zone 5 conditioning? I'll start with zone 5 because it's the simplest and quickest to explain. In the 5-zone model, zone 1 being low activity like walking, zone 5 is your highest end activity, like repeated max effort sprints, for instance. While sprinting requires a major upshift bioenergetically into carbohydrate utilization, it seems to, according to recent research, have the greatest impact on mitochondria per unit time. The problem is you can only do so much of it because it induces an extreme amount of fatigue very quickly. The amplitude, the fidelity of the signal is very high, but the duration of the signal is very low. Conversely, zone 2, or moderate continuous intensity activity, has a, moderate signal amplitude, signal fidelity, but an extended duration. So in terms of total aggregate volume, you have a very robust signal. Now, what defines zone 2 bioenergetically is activity that puts you at roughly 2 millimoles of blood lactate, which is the point at which any increase in activity is going to shunt you out of oxidative phosphorylation and into glycolysis. In other words, if you go any harder, you will no longer be able to primarily utilize fats as fuel. You'll have to use sugars, glucose. How do you know without a laboratory environment that you're at roughly 2 millimoles of blood lactate? Well, it's easy. It's called the talk test. When you are doing your extended cardio, your extended conditioning, and you are at an activity level where you can still conduct a conversation, but your breathing is labored. So when you're talking, the person that's listening can tell that you're exercising, but you can still continue the conversation for the duration of that activity. That is roughly when you're at 2 millimoles of blood lactate. And that is as good a proxy, according to the lead researchers, for instance, Dr. Inigo-san Milan at University of Colorado, as you can get to laboratory equipment out in the world. Now, the key to making zone 2 conditioning effective is when you hit that 2 millimoles of blood lactate, when you hit that talk test level, you want to look at the device that you're on, or your smartwatch or your phone if you're running out in the street or biking out in the street, to see your wattage. Take note of that number. Then divide that number by your weight in kilograms, and that should give you a single integer value of something between 2 and 5, and that is your watts per kilogram. And that value is, number one, the metric that you're going to track to drive your improvement, but that number also acts as a proxy for your overall mitochondrial function and metabolic health. From 2 to 3 watts per kilogram is normal to good. From 3 to 4 is good to great. Above 4 watts per kilogram, and you're pushing endurance athlete levels of mitochondrial health and metabolic efficiency. And you should observe a concomitant improvement in your health markers as a result. If you're enjoying my content, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the YouTube channel. And remember, consistency is a superpower. Stay in the fight. Thanks for watching.